We should begin with the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. This does come up at some point. Buddha said in the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form.
He said form is empty, not
Well,
emptiness.
True enough, suk domba ho. Domba ni suk so. Ha! Half right, half wrong. You. Now, Betsy did a big search on Dongba in Tibetan, empty, well in English, empty and emptiness. Dongba in Tibetan, Dongba and Dongbani. In Sanskrit, Shunya and Shunyata. And she found that they're used interchangeably. Not always, of course. So, I did not go over her research, but sharp as she is, I trusted it. And she found, and we, if she can remember her research, maybe I should ask her. She's next door as of 2 days ago. Yeah, because it's an important point, and especially for translation.
Can I ask just a quick, well,
Yes,
I mean, the question that,
please.
if you just give your thought, even though there could be more research done, I'm sure, do you have any sense of, is there a specific kind of obvious and explicit purpose for the nidra to be added onto Tongba, whereas we always have so many different kinds of qualities, in relation to a chichen, in relation to a subject. There's mitakpa, impermanence, permanent, takpa, mitakpa, jeba, ngobo, all those other terms, there's never a nidra added, never the nis added, but only for Tongpa, even selflessness in English we say, but we never say dagmeba ni, right? It's just dagmeba, dagme, not dagme ni. So do you have any sense of why that unique forming of that term there?
I would agree with you just on the superficial aspect of your question. With regard to dak meba ni, as far as your never word goes, I'll bet we can come up with a ni-ness somewhere in the translation of the Danger, in the translation of the treatises. I would bet on that one, but don't ask me to put up my money. But with regard to those other words, probably not. Hard to say. But almost never. If you just switch to almost never. Yeah. The difference between the adjective and the, yeah, and the noun and the ness. So we should, I should ask Betsy why she, transfer my question or this question to her, why it might be that people make a deal out of it, or a Sanskritist. I don't think we have to make a big deal out of it. I don't think a Sanskritist is going to say that. It just shows my lack of capability. Your picture, by the way, is frozen, so we can't see your full reaction.
The frozenness is the full reaction.
That's good.
Turn to ice.
I know.
It's been having an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough one. And certainly it appears that Tibetans didn't get that into it. Even if we can come up with a Sanskritist who is into it. Okay. I shouldn't allow myself to get into the possible quandaries that go through my mind. So, Sharmar wants us to know what Ngag-wang-tra-shi is saying without forcing us to pick up Ngag-wang-tra-shi's text. He doesn't know that we, in the 21st century, have just read through his text. So in the 24th chapter, but now form is emptiness, emptiness is form. At some point this is cited. I've seen it recently in preparing for this. That's saying dependent arising is emptiness, emptiness is dependent arising. In the Heart Sutra, the equivalent of saying that. And this is, really bothered people. It should. So, Sharma presenting Ngag-wang-tra-shi's opinion, which is above in this book, Hopkins' book, indicates that the meaning of dependent arising, the meaning of emptiness is we describe that which is dependent arising as emptiness. So it's like saying we describe whatever is dependent arising, we describe that as emptiness. And in the same stanza, Nāgārjuna goes on to indicate that the meaning of emptiness is the meaning of dependent arising. Does it the other way around. That, meaning emptiness, is dependent imputation. Now, if we go down into the note, the fourth line of the stanza is, that is the middle path. Now, path, you would think, mostly is a consciousness. And it's like, wow, blow your mind again. Giant Sheba above, I don't know if it's still at page 270, but it's good to go and look and find each one of these and check it out. Cites this stanza, the whole stanza, with Chandrakirti's comments. Okay. Now, Nāgārjuna's treatise, and then I wondered, as I was reading this morning, hey, where did you come up with the brackets in this stanza, in the note? So I went back and look to, at that spot. And the brackets are from Tsong-kha-pa's commentary. So I put that note, and so now this note reads, Nāgārjuna's treatise says, and then I put in parenthesis, brackets are from Tsong-kha-pa's commentary, Peking edition, blah, 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 and I give the page numbers so that we know where it came from. Now this is important because Tsong-kha-pa himself says, for all of us who think that it's the third most subtle meaning of dependent arising that is made equivalent with emptiness. But Tsong-kha-pa himself says we describe arising dependent on causes and conditions. This is the first of the three. Not even the second of the three, arising dependent on parts or basis of designation, basis of imputation. He doesn't. He deliberately chooses the first. So you see, I'm always saying it's any of the three. That's the meaning of emptiness of inherently existent production.
Mm-hmm.
That emptiness of inherently existent production is dependent imputation. Just this emptiness of inherently existent production is the middle path. Now, what you would want, what we also would want, put it this way, is brackets on the middle path. Okay, now, come on, Tsong-kha, tell us what, if you're going to say that all these, is it 4 now? 1, 2, 3, 4, isn't it? Dependent arising, emptiness, dependent imputation, and middle path. So you got 4 now. Are you gonna put equal sign on it? Equal signs on it, like in the kindergarten, where my teacher said, the house is red. And she said, is means equals. And I decided she doesn't know anything. That's stupid. Just so, when somebody says dependent arising is emptiness, emptiness is a non-affirming negative. So anybody who said dependent arisings are emptinesses, okay, my beautiful golden watch, okay? See, I'm working on 2 cameras, so I got to move it over a little bit, make sure it's clear. That's a non-affirming negative, a mere absence. Give me a break. Anybody who said that is stupid. Oh, but who said it? Nāgārjuna. So then, Nāgārjuna is a jerk? I always use as an example, Abraham Lincoln is a jerk, our glorious leader. I don't use somebody who is renowned as a jerk, but Abraham Lincoln, he's a pretty clever guy.
Jeffrey, maybe that's where you need the word empty instead of emptiness.
Well, yeah, you and Ngag-wang-tra-shi. You and yeah, you see how you take it. So she's the rebirth of Ngag-wang-tra-shi, and so you got to take all these a certain way in order to fit them together as equals. And he makes them strict equals, you see? and Shama Gyatso saying that's Ngag-wang-tra-shi's problem. He wanted to make them strict equals, strict synonyms. Whatever is the one is the other. Whatever is the middle path is, well, is a dependent arising? That's okay. Whatever is an emptiness, you see, emptiness is a an emptiness, is a dependent arising. Whatever is so my beautiful golden watch is going to be a non-affirming negative, So he said that's the problem. So we've got to find a different way to read it. A different way that's different from the obvious. Whereas, when I was at my Zen exercise workout a few days ago, Wednesday early morning, I'm showing off, 5:20 in the morning, my friend has organized one. He's a Zen priest. 5:20 in the morning here in Vancouver over Zoom. And they're doing form is emptiness, emptiness is form, just before we met. All right, anyway. I had to squeeze that in there somewhere. Anyway, how are you going to handle it? Because we're dealing with Gelugpa, nothing is, what do you say? What is the word for two things that don't fit together, but you let them not fit together? And see,
Paradox?
yes, paradox. There are no paradoxes. Whereas I'm saying in Zen, let the paradox be the paradox, and through your meditation, see the harmony. But in Gelug, you even work up an explanation. And Ngag-wang-tra-shi has his workup, and Shama Gyatso has his workup. And if you work it up well, you have very good evidence. You have very good evidence. Stimulating evidence. Evidence that, like meditation, but not a substitute for meditation, no question, opens up something for you. Okay? And that's why we study this. We describe that which is dependent arising as emptiness. And that word is, in Tibetan, Dongba Nyi. That is dependent imputation. So these should, they're shocking statements. They're shocking statements of seeming paradox. Or you could put it paradox. Or utter stupidity. Face it. Idiocy. Like some nut Or somebody read form is emptiness, emptiness is form, and said, therefore, right? Right out of that said this stanza. Beautiful. So, and Chandrakirti says, and it's really, is it really? I wanted to put this quote from Giant Shiva. I want to put Giant Shiva citing these two in place of the lines that I didn't translate. Due to lacking two extremes of existence, non-existence, just this, therefore emptiness, dependent arising, middle path, are different names for dependent arising. That's what Chandrakirti said. And this is just what Tsong-kha-pa says is not the case. It's beautiful. It's like, what the hell are they doing? They're smashing paradox. Tsong-kha-pa is smashing paradox in our face. You know, we started out with Gyaltsab telling us what Tsong-kha-pa said. And what Tsong-kha-pa is, it's like he's taking pages out of Chandrakirti and slapping us across the face. It's just lovely. In saying, figure it out. in Tsong-kha-pa to Gyaltsab, going through 5 different ways of possibly taking this and saying it's not this, he goes through 5. Not this, not this, not this, not this, not this, not this. It's got to, in other words, to set it up. These are, ordinary ways of looking at meaning, and saying there's a way of taking meaning. And that's been what we've been looking at. And we're approaching the end of all of this. So the quote from Tsong-kha-pa, Tsong-kha-pa's great commentary, says that if the meaning of emptiness is the meaning of dependent arising, we've read it how many times by now? Is like positing the definition of pot. That which is bulbous, flat bottom, able to hold fluid. That's what a pot is. It's a pretty good definition. It's got to have some expand. I don't know if it has to be bulbous. It could be, just have to. I don't know. Flat bottom, able to hold fluid, it's meaning a pot. This is not feasible, etc. And then look, and it is not feasible, even if it is posited that emptiness is the meaning of the term expressing. We had one that was saying, well, they all mean the same thing. The terms all mean the same thing. Didn't Nāgārjuna say that? You can imagine how this is debated. So Nāgārjuna is wrong? That's what you'd be faced with. Or if it's taken as meaning that an awareness ascertaining dependent arising realizes emptiness. Ascertains emptiness, realizes. But you'd have to say realizes, which is looser, because it's either explicitly or implicitly. Remember? When you use realizes leaves open the possibility that it's implicitly, whereas ascertains means that it's explicit. I hope I'm right there, right? Yeah. Okay. See, what he said above, he didn't introduce. Now we're still in Ginni-gyatso. Shama Ginni-gyatso. Now, Shama Ginni-gyatso, I don't know if he himself says Ngag-wang-tra-shi. Well, we can see. No, he just says great exposition of dependent arising. And by that, we know that he's talking about Ngag-wang-tra-shi. When you give the book title, if you're literate, you know who wrote it. So Hopkins always puts in the author. And that's a bit deceptive. Hopkins doesn't want to put put it in brackets, because the book's already got too many brackets. And so Hopkins chose, don't put that in brackets, but say, somewhere in technical points way in the beginning that he's added the author's names. It does give you a deceptive sense of what's in Tibetan books. Tibetan books, generally speaking, don't tell you the author's name. If you're literate, you know the author's name. So this means a lot of readers are illiterate. Illiterate in that sense. Now, what we learn from this is that, not from this very point that I'm making now, that Ngag-wang-tra-shi is Giant Sheba's top student while Giant Sheba was alive, and he's not always right. One of Giant Sheba's later students, Shama Ginni-gyatso, openly criticizes him and corrects him. That's what he's doing here. That's what Shama is doing. He's taking the most famous student and criticizing him, correcting him. And in fact, in the Great Exposition of Dependent Arising, his formation of Pratītya Samutpada, I don't remember who it is, but one of Giant Sheba's later students, points out that Ngag-wang-tra-shi makes some mistakes in handling the Sanskrit. And I should have made a note on it as soon as I saw that. And put it where I could put my hands back on it, since I spend a lot of time on that. Okay, but that's what the early followers of Tsong-kha-pa, they treated him pretty much like just another author, and quite freely pointed out his mistakes without too much masking, putting on a mask, and pretending that they you know, it was a more of a free-for-all. More of it. Establishes that, although emptiness meaning of dependent arising, its going as the meaning of dependent arising is for a proponent of the middle who has complete analysis of the view. Right. But what does that mean? If you've realized emptiness, then you can do this? Or does it take considerable development, even if you've realized the view? Okay? And most people say you've got to have considerable development. It is not for all who have astray independent arising without cognition. He does this through citing Tsong-kha-pa's three principal aspects of the path. That book, as you know, how wonderful it is that Geshe Wangyal had us memorize it early on, very early on. You learn the language and you memorize it. And so remember Dendal Harumba's marvelous commentary. And the statement in Tsongkha's great commentary. And, you know, this statement itself, right, raises an issue, right, as I just said. At what point, even after you've realized, even after you've refuted inherent existence with valid cognition, when is it? Okay. And so follow out the references. Shamar now, I want to say, instead of presents, details his disagreement about the three synonyms. Because I don't want to say, now is where the disagreement begins. Because I want to leave it open. You know, he's been rehearsing, and are there disagreements up above? But as a 21st century commentator, I should be saying, hey, look here. Maybe there's a disagreement here before this point. But the three, you know, in quotes, synonyms, maybe not really synonyms. And of course, that's Shamar's point. They aren't really synonyms. So, in this very short section in Shamar's text, I have figured out that there are 5 steps in Shamar's presentation, which I have put in brackets and made bold. And I used to translate this as homage to the unequaled Buddha. I used to put the last line first. In Tibetan, the last line is the last line. But I thought it'd be easier to read I think we've already talked about this. I put the last line first to make it easier to read. Homage to the unequaled Buddha, supreme by speaking of emptiness dependent arising, and the middle path as having the same meaning. Same meaning. The word is meaning as one, as same. And that as same meaning is taken as synonyms, or as the first white man Geshe said, mutually, what did he say? Oh, I forget. I adopted his term, turnchik. I adopt? Yes, Lo-sang-terya.
Mutually inclusive?
No, I didn't.
Equivalent?
Huh? Equivalent.
Equivalent.
Thank you. Campbell comes through. As so often is the case. What did she say? That had to be some amusing. Okay. And so I chose a literal translation here as having the same meaning. Super literal.
Do you think it would be maybe for Vicky's sake to mention the emptiness here also is just the single syllable tong without either tongpa or tongpani, just the single syllable?
Oh. Yeah.
Because it's a poem.
Yeah, okay. I'll put a note on it. And let people wonder. And say, ask Betsy Napper. Sorry, I can't restrain myself. That's a number of years ago. I think she'll remember. Okay. We should invite her to the meeting and then thrust it at her. No. Now, in the essence of eloquence above, okay, I don't remember if I looked at that it would have been yesterday. No, this morning I went through a patient. I was going to read on, and then I thought, oh no, I better read this closely this morning. And adds that here's what the essence of eloquence says, indicates that dependent arising, middle path, and emptiness of inherent existence have the same meaning. Again, Tibetan is Turnchikpa. But it would be nice if I put in the whole thing, but I didn't. Including, does he say Dong or Dongbani? But you see, I refuse to get into what Betsy already did. I'm escaping. List of 4 emptiness dependent, different names for dependent. Yes. Shaman. Now, I mention here that John Sheba's of Giant Shiva's most famous, I should say, actual student, right? So what, as I mentioned before, Guntan Gunjo Tembe Drame, who was not his actual, is that the word? Actual student while Giant Shiva was alive, is depicted as his other, when we have a tanka of Giant Shiva and his two students, Kuntan Kunjo Tembe Drame is the other one. But that was not during Giant Shiva's lifetime. Now, if we want to ask who's the more reliable, Ngag-wang-tra-shi or Kuntan Kunjo Tembe Drame, it's Kuntan Kunjo Tembe Drame, not Ngag-wang-tra-shi. I have to say. I'll say no one's going to choose Ngag-wang-tra-shi. Kuntan is renowned outside of Gomang and outside of Gelug as having remarkable qualities of analysis. So if they're refuting him, they'll say something like, I don't want to refute Kuntan Kuncho Deme, but so by setting him up as his most famous actual student, as famous for his debate manuals and so forth, means he's somebody who is carefully working out the meaning. But it is rather strange, and it always struck me that he doesn't come to the conclusion that these are actual synonyms, which is called same meaning and variance of the name, nominal variance. In Tibetan, Turnchik Mingi Namtrang. It always bothered me that he wouldn't go that far, which means like, you could say super equivalent, strictly equivalent, strict synonyms, so that there's no room for, fudging it. So let's stop there. We've been enough.